Okay, we're live. Good morning, folks. My name is Dustin Jones. This is the PT on Ice Daily Show brought to you by the Institute of Clinical Excellence. Live on Facebook here, live on Instagram as well. And hello to the podcast listeners. So today we're going to talk about exercise. Good morning, Aaron. As much as necessary, as little as possible. So currently, Christina Previtt and I, we teach modern management of the older adult. Essential Foundations is one of the courses that we teach. It's our 8-week online cohort, and it is wrapping up. It's been an amazing cohort. We're finishing up this evening at 8 p.m. And a lot of the conversations towards the end of the course speak to how can we become providers of choice? How can we really set ourselves up in the marketplace to be seen as the go-to providers for older adults? But then we also have conversations of practical implementation. We've talked about the ACSM exercise guidelines. We've talked about how to scale activities, how to do deadlifts and squats and loaded carries. We talked about psychosocial considerations. We talked about clinical geriatric syndromes, a lot of the things that are super, super important in working with older adults. However, it can be difficult to actually apply some of these things to our patients, especially when we're talking about resistance training. Some folks, it can be very, very challenging to get a weight in their hand and to have them actually change behavior as a result of working with you. I know Jeff Moore's mentioned this before, but his emphasis at this point in his career is really thinking about behavior change. How can we make long-lasting change in people's behavior and their perceptions of themselves and what they're capable of? And so that's what I want to talk about today and dive into some of the research on exercise and this concept of as much as necessary, as little as possible. So I first heard that term, as much as necessary, as little as possible, from Jeff, who was quoting Tim Fearon. Tim Fearon is an amazing physical therapist. I haven't got to meet him or interact with him yet, but everything I've heard about the guy has been on point and pretty stellar. But he leverages this phrase in many ways, and I've definitely taken a liking to it in many areas of life, it seems. So as much as necessary, as little as possible. We can apply this to many areas of life in our physical therapy exams and interventions, but let's talk about exercise. Now, whenever we are talking about practical implementation of some of the exercise recommendations that we do make, we often encourage people to think about exercise snacks. Now, exercise snacking is trying to get short, intense bits of exercise or movement throughout your day. We all know that the ACSM recommended exercise guidelines can be rather intimidating. And if you really reflect on your own lifestyle, I would guarantee you probably less than half the people watching or listening to this are actually meeting those recommended guidelines. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of movement. And especially for someone that may have never exercised before in their life, they may have been relatively active, but for them to take up that type of activity throughout their week is a big, big ask. So let's break it up into manageable chunks. Exercise snacks. So we're not feasting, we're snacking. But the big question is that even effective? Are we actually getting results if we are doing exercise snacks? So let's go through some of the research that really speaks to some of the minimum effective dose of exercise. I've spoken to this a couple times before, and I'll reference those previous PT on Ices in the Facebook post so y'all can search that and get the link. But let's go through some of these first. Good morning, Kelsey. How's it going? Okay, first one I really want to talk about is a systematic review that was looking at the effect of exercise snacks on symptoms of depression in older adults. So this was looking at how much exercise can we do, or what's the minimum effective dose to actually have an impact on some symptoms of depression, for example. And what the systematic review found was that if people do moderate to high intensity exercise 3 times a week for just 15 minutes, they're going to see a reduction in their depressive symptoms. So this wasn't looking at physical function, it was looking at kind of their mental health, that 3 times a week of 15 minutes of high intensity, moderate to high intensity exercise is going to get the job done. That's not a lot, and that's great. Now, what about the physical side of things? I spoke about this study, this is probably a month or two ago, of a group that is looking at body weight squats and its impact on people's physical function, also at quadricep, cross-sectional area. And so what they were able to do was perform body weight squats. They were basically sit to stands for 3 minutes. All right, so this was to a song, a traditional song that everybody knew. in that culture, and they sang the song for 3 minutes. They did that twice a week, and this is over an 8-week period. And what they were able to show was that their lower extremity, knee extensor strength improved dramatically. Their sit-to-stand obviously improved. Their SPPB improved, and also their cross-sectional area of their quadricep improved as well. So across the board, they showed improvement in function and improvement in anatomy based on 2 times a week of 3 minutes of body weight sit-to-stands. That's pretty incredible to think about how little of a dose that people really need to show a response. Now, there is a new study that was released last month in October that I wanted to talk about and just bring to light to really encourage us to think about how we can practically implement these recommendations so people will actually be able to do them on a day-to-day basis once we discharge them. So this is in the Journal of Aging Research. This is published in October of 2019. Will Boyd, good to see you, sir. The doppelganger on the line here. Journal of Aging Research, exercise snacking to improve muscle function in healthy older adults. So this is a pilot study, rather small study, but some very, very interesting findings that I want to share with you all. So they had 20 folks. All right, 20 individuals, relatively healthy older adults. So these are folks that we are typically not working with. I'm just going to read this. 20 healthy community-dwelling older men and women, 65 to 80 years, not undertaking regular structured exercise, were recruited for the pilot study. Individuals who were non-smokers, had a BMI of over 20, had no contraindications to exercise or recent history of musculoskeletal injury, and had scored 8 or above with no score of 0 on any test of the SPPB. So the SPPB is a short physical performance battery test. You have 3 balance measures of feet together, semi-tandem, and tandem stance, and you're trying to hold that for 10 seconds. Then you have a gait speed portion, and then you have a 5-time sit-to-stand test. So these people got at least an 8 on the SPPB. Now, for the home health clinicians or anyone working in more acute settings, you likely have no one on your caseload that is going to achieve an 8 on the SPPB. I know for me in home health, it's often a 0, a 1, a 2, maybe a 4 if they're really, really crazy. But typically you're on that lower end. You outpatient folk, you may be working with folks that are in that kind of, 7, 8, 9, 10 range, likely some 12s as well, some 12s out of 12. So all that to say, these are pretty relatively fit older adults. A lot of people that aren't in the physical therapy clinic. Jeff Musgrave, good morning, sir. So those were the people that were in this study. So they took those folks. There were 10 of them in the control group and then 10 of them in the intervention group. Both groups got 150 grams of yogurt basically for protein supplementation. And the control group continued their regular physical activity. All right, so they didn't change a thing. Now the intervention group, what they did was 2 times a day. So the morning and the afternoon, they did a 5-minute remom. Now the authors did not call this a remom, a rehab every minute on the minute, hat tip to Mitch Babcock, but they basically did 5 different exercises for 1 minute and then just moved on to the next one. So a 5-minute remom twice a day. They did this for 28 days, okay? So keep in mind, 28 days that they performed these interventions. Now the exercise that they did sit to stand from a chair. They did seated knee extensions of alternating legs, all right, so long arc quads, standing knee bends of alternating legs, marching on the spot, and then standing calf raises. All right, nothing crazy. Pretty typical. You may see that a lot in Jerry PT programs. So no resistance here. Keep in mind there. All right, so the results. After 28 days, let me repeat, 28 days of this intervention, 60-second sit-to-stand score improved by 31% in the exercise group with no change in control. In 28 days, with 10 minutes of exercise a day, there was a 31% improvement in the 60-second sit-to-stand test. That is dramatic, very dramatic. Large effect sizes were observed for the difference in change scores between the groups for maximum leg pressing power and thigh muscle cross-sectional area. The present pilot study suggests that exercise snacking might be a promising strategy to improve leg muscle function and size in older adults, and it needs further investigation, blah, 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 blah. 28 days, y'all, they were able to have a 31% improvement in the 60-second sit-to-stand test, all based on 5 super simple exercises, a 5-minute remom. Think about that. Good morning, Spencer. I just think of all the ways that I can leverage some of that research. When we think about the first study that I mentioned about, just 15 minutes 3 times a week can improve symptoms of depression, of even 2 times a week of 3 minutes of sit to stands can improve cross-sectional area and someone's, leg extension power. And then this study, in 28 days of 2 5-minute remoms a day, they were able to improve their 60-second sit to stand and their cross-sectional area. That is good news, my friends, and that should give us the ability to be a little more creative in how we are introducing exercise with a lot of our patients. So here are the big takeaways that I want you all to think about and actually leveraging this in your practice and in your interactions with folks. The first thing is that we need to keep in mind that many of these studies are with relatively healthy older adults. I would look at this inclusion and exclusion criteria, and these are not a lot of people that I'm working with. These are people that are relatively fit. They're doing pretty well. The 8 was the minimum score for the SPPB. That's pretty awesome. Now think of the patients that we typically work with. Long lists of medical diagnoses. Typically we have a lot of medications on board. People that aren't very active. They're not getting an 8 out of 12 on the SPPB. Now think about how sensitive and responsive they are going to be to a stimulus like this. They stand to gain more than what many of these subjects do in this study. You may see even more of an improvement with many of the older adults that you're working with. I can definitely say this being in the home health arena, but even for you all in the outpatient arena, your patients stand to gain even more from exercise snacking than what we may see in some of this literature. And I think that is absolutely amazing and very encouraging for us to leverage some of this type of programming. Second thing, think about your home exercise programs. We talk about this a lot on the podcast, but we need to meet people where they are and be very thoughtful in how we're trying to introduce some of our recommendations and not just kind of blanket, vomit over all over them with all this information, all these recommendations and this laundry to-do list. We need to meet people where they are. And sometimes recommending that they meet the ACSM exercise guidelines the first week is going to be nothing but a waste of time and oxygen. We may want to introduce exercise snacking, but you can introduce exercise snacking from kind of that biopsychosocial consideration, but also know that it's going to be effective from the physiological standpoint. This isn't just a psychological intervention or introduction. We are literally going to make people better physically and from the anatomy standpoint as well. So that's very encouraging. We can be very thoughtful in introducing that, but know we're actually going to get results, and then we can continue to progress. So our home exercise program, I think can maybe be a little shorter, maybe a little simpler. Make sure that intensity is pretty solid, and you got some good volume there, and they're going to get results. And that, for me, is very, very exciting to think about with these folks. And then last but not least, and I alluded to this in a previous PT on Ice, no weights, no problem. With many of the folks that we are working with, we can take, if we're not implementing resistance, which we highly, highly encourage and think we should be doing that, but if that is off the table, if we are working with someone that may be very intimidated with resistance, that is just not necessarily going to change their behaviors and adopt holding a kettlebell in front of them as they're doing the sit to stands, then we need to ramp up the volume and the time. And that can get the stimulus that is actually going to get results. So 3 minutes of sit to stands, for example, twice a week for many of our folks is going to show some type of improvement. So no weights, no problem. Don't stress it too much. Yes, we want to get to that point where we are applying an adequate load. However, with many older adults that we work with, especially in the clinical setting, if they do not have resistance, many of them are still going to respond rather well. All right, so keep in mind, these studies they're typically involving healthy older adults, typically not our folks. Just think about how sensitive and responsive our patients are to some of this, that we may even see more benefit with many of the people that we work with based on a lot of these findings. Think about your home exercise programs and what you're recommending. Exercise snacking is okay. Even twice a week, 3 minutes of sit to stands is going to help with folks. And you may even see significant change like in this last study I referenced in 28 days, which is absolutely amazing. And no weights, no problem. We can ramp up that volume and get a relatively high intensity and get the job done. Think about that, y'all. 28 days, you were able to show improvement in a big way. When we talk about, building the bike. Good morning, Tom. this is a great way to leverage that we can build the bike. We can create change and demonstrate change in a relatively short period of time. And that is a great way to really serve people well, especially considering with some of the time constraints that many of us have in our different settings. Good morning, Caitlin. All right. That's all I got for you. I'll put links to all those studies in the Facebook post of this video. So for those on Instagram, check that out. For those on the podcast, check that out as well. Just go on Facebook, search the Institute of Clinical Excellence, go to the videos tab, and you can search the title of this video, and then you'll be able to find that relatively easily. So right now, what time is it? It's 8:49 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That means Jeff Moore sent me an amazing email about 19 minutes ago called Hump Day Hustling. So every week, if you're not getting this email, you need to sign up. Every week, Jeff fields the faculty, and he says, hey, what pertinent research articles, social media posts, infographics, whatever you have come across that is helpful for you in your work, send it my way. I'm going to create a super short, succinct email with 5 links, helpful links. We're going to send it out to the people that follow the Institute of Clinical Excellence. And that email right there is absolute gold. You are guaranteed to walk away with at least 2 to 3 helpful bits of information, knowledge that's going to translate into your practice. Whether you're the home health clinician like me or you're working with high-level athletes in the outpatient arena, it is absolute gold. So go to ptoниce.com, go to the bottom, and you can sign up for Hump Day Hustling. You'll get that email next week at 8:30 a.m. When Jeff Moore sends that out. So other than that, that's all I got. Good morning, Morgan. Y'all have a good Wednesday, and I will talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.